Welcome to the Lit Mom Podcast, your go-to source for bite-sized literacy tips and tricks. Join me as we explore evidence-based strategies, techniques, and resources that promote strong reading and writing skill development. Get ready to empower your family with the knowledge and tools to navigate the world of structured literacy and unlock limitless potential. Welcome back to the second season of the Lit Mom Podcast, the podcast where we spend 15 minutes talking about different aspects of structured literacy and how families like yours can support your child in developing their foundational literacy skills at home. I'm your host, Deb, and I'm looking forward to diving into a range of new topics this season that still focus on quick and easy tips and tricks that you can use at home with your child or children. For our first episode back, we are going to focus on universal screeners. I feel like the universal screener is something that is going to be a big conversation right now, especially as school boards are rolling it out or wrapping it up, because we are trying to get data collected to help support and drive our instruction in the classroom. So you may be wondering, what is a universal screener? And I'm hoping that we can clear that up today. Before we get into any more information about universal screeners for this episode, I would first like to acknowledge the traditional territory in which I reside on. I reside on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which includes the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Let's get into our conversation about universal screeners. I'm going to back up first a little bit to give you a little bit of the background about why you might be seeing more things about universal screeners. Some boards may be sending information home already about screeners that have happened within their school board for students at this time of year. But in 2022, the Ontario Human Rights Commission released the Right to Read report. And in the Right to Read report, they showcase the importance of using a universal screener for children in kindergarten, year 2 students to grade 2 as a way to make sure that we are catching students' needs earlier, especially if we have children that are having difficulties when it comes to reading and developing their reading skills. We don't want to keep using that wait and see approach that when they get into the later grades, then we have them pulling for support. We want to have that preventative approach where we're going to catch them really early. We can really target the skills and provide instruction that focuses on the skills that students really need the support with. So universal screeners have been rolling out this year. It is not mandatory for educators to use a universal screener. However, there are many educators that are doing this voluntarily. Some have been able to receive training. Others have taken it on their own, depending on which board you are in. I cannot speak for all of the boards in Ontario. So every board is rolling this out a little bit differently. There have been 3 screeners, early reading screeners, that were approved for use in Ontario. Acadience is the one that I'm going to speak about in this podcast because it is the one that I have experience with in my own classroom. I've had some training in using this screener as well, and it is the one that is being used within my school board. So it's the one that I can speak to the most, and it is the one that I most commonly hear about through social media or other educators that are talking about what might be happening within their school boards. So if anyone has any information about the other 2, because that is what their board is using, I always welcome learning about those 2 as well. So Acadience is a universal screener that can be done paper and pencil. It can also be done on an online portal. The purpose of it is to kind of gauge students. We like to talk about it as a temperature check to see how students are doing with developing their reading skills. It gives educators that nice little snapshot of if what is happening in the classroom is supporting those learning needs, or if additional pieces need to be happening to be more targeted depending on each individual child. This is meant to happen a couple times throughout the school year. So all students can be screened at the beginning of the school year, about now, so middle of the school year, and then again at the end of the school year. The purpose of that is to make sure that we are checking in to continue to see whether or not what we are doing in our classrooms is supporting the needs of the students. We want to be responsive educators. And so to do that, we really want to use data that is going to help us have that snapshot of what do our kiddos need from us at that particular time in the year. It is not meant to be a piece that is going to be used for your child's grades. So this is something that while it is going to become Part of students' report cards, you can see on the bottom of an Ontario school report card, it notes whether or not there is an early reading screener that has been done, yes or no. It is not meant to be used to drive a literacy grade. So this is meant to help educators make sure we are meeting the needs of the students in front of us. So I want to make sure that that's really clear, because sometimes I think it's a misconception associated with a universal screener. Universal screeners are also meant to be really quick. We are able to do the screener with students in about 10 minutes, depending on the grade level. And they're called subtests. And so these are little activities. They are timed. Usually they take about 1 minute for a student to complete. And there may be several depending on the time of year, but they just give us a snapshot of all of those foundational skills that students should be acquiring or have become proficient in, depending on which grade they are in. Now, in season 1 of the Lit Mom podcast, we covered a lot of the foundational literacy skills. So if your child comes home or you have a conversation with your child's educators, and they talk about key foundational skills that your child may need additional practice and support with, I recommend going back and, of course, checking out those episodes, because in those episodes, we cover a lot of ways that you can support those specific skills at home or even in the classroom if you're an educator listening in. Acadience is a tool that was designed to assess the key foundational skills of literacy for children. And so we are focusing right now on kindergarten to grade 2. However, Acadience is available all the way up to grade 8. The foundational skills that Acadience and these other screeners are going to focus on include phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency. Their vocabulary is going to come into play when they are reading, as well as comprehension skills. These are all foundational literacy skills that we can clearly see when we look at the new language curriculum. Under Strand B, we have all of those foundational literacy skills outlined in our curriculum, and now we have a screener that we're using to really assess and check how our students are doing and children are doing with developing those skills. So they go hand in hand, they pair really nicely. And again, it's just a really quick snapshot that educators can use to begin to plan and support children in front of them. Thinking about Acadience being used to help us fill the gaps and cracks in the foundation for students when we talk about their literacy makes me think about a recent episode on the reading road trip. So if you haven't listened to the reading road trip, whether you're an educator or a parent, I highly recommend it. Kate Wynn is the host, and she is a kindergarten educator in Ontario. She has all of these amazing guests join her who are so knowledgeable about all things literacy. So it is a podcast that I recommended in the first episode of season 1, and I'm doing it again in season 2 because the information shared is so valuable. And so a recent episode that has been aired talked about equity and literacy. And it really stuck out for me as a reminder for why we like to share the information that we're learning, why I'm doing this podcast, because we want for all children to have the opportunity to learn how to read and write. It goes much further than just wanting for my own child to be successful in literacy instruction and being confident in his ability to read and write, but I truly want for other children in my classrooms, in schools, I want for them all to succeed and become confident readers and writers. I think that it's a really great reminder when we listen to that podcast, especially that episode, that there are going to be things that we need to do as a community, as educators and parents, and work together to make sure that we are filling those cracks in any child's foundation when it comes to developing literacy skills. So this is my little plug to go and listen to that episode if you are able to do so. It connects really nicely with making sure that we have the tools that we need to support all children, not just our own. I've given a really general overview of universal screeners, Acadience, and so I just want to touch on really quickly what foundational skills the subtests actually focus on. Again, your child is not going to do all of these subtests. It depends on what grade they are in, the time of year. So, for example, children that are in kindergarten right now, they are going to be completing 4 subtests that are a little bit different than maybe what they're going to be doing in the beginning of grade 1. The subtests are starting out with our first sound fluency. And so, first sound fluency is just trying to see students' understanding of phonemic awareness. They have to listen to a word and be able to pick out the first sound that they hear in a word. So if the word was dog, they're going to be able to pick out that the beginning sound or initial sound is D. And so that's a really good key indicator when we talk about phonemic awareness. Are they able to isolate the beginning sound? This is a great skill to be practicing at home. If your child is able to do the beginning sound, then have them try and pick out the final sound. And if they're able to do that, and we're using really simple words that we call CVC words, so it's just consonant, vowel, consonant, like cat, dog, hop, have them then try and pick out the medial sound. That's a phonemic awareness skill that is important when we're talking about being able to read and write. So the next skill that we also look at is letter naming fluency. This is not meant to be tied to a foundational skill, but we do use it as an indicator of risk. Just having students be able to name letters, that is a stable part when we talk about alphabetic knowledge and alphabetic principle, knowing that letters form words and words form sentences that we read or write. So being able to name letters is an additional piece that we like to use when we're talking about a student's understanding and literacy development. The third subtest is the phoneme segmentation fluency subtest. This is 1 minute where students are going to hear a word and they have to tell you all of the sounds that they hear within the word. So segmenting words is a really great way to practice and build phonemic awareness. Segmenting is one of those skills that has been shown in research to be associated with being able to read and write. So it's a skill that we definitely want for children to be able to do independently. So this is something that you can be doing at home really quickly to practice with your child. You can give them a word and ask them to tell you how many sounds they hear in the word. So if the word was cat, they're going to go k, at, 3 sounds in cat. Some kiddos like to use their arms. It's what we did in our classroom last year. So if the word was book, they go book, book. Just having that practice, it is oral at this point. The way I am doing it, you can bring in letters. You can tell your child a word and have them print it to bring in that letter formation or use magnetic letters. Having students visually see letters, whether they're magnets or they're printing, it really helps to move them along in developing those skills. So it doesn't hurt to bring in those pieces instead of just doing it orally. However, if you're driving in the car, if you're out for a walk and you can sneak in some phonemic awareness practice, it's going to benefit your child. And that is one of the skills that we focus on in the universal screener. The fourth subtest in Acadience is known as the nonsense words fluency subtest. The reason that we have this is children are expected to read nonsense words. This gives us a really quick snapshot if they're able to decode words effectively and that they have a really strong understanding of letter sound pairing so that when they recognize them on paper, they're able to blend them together even though the words don't make sense. So we don't teach nonsense words in the classroom. Research shows that that's not beneficial. This is meant to be used as an assessment to see how students are doing with developing their awareness of phonics and word attack skills. And so this is, again, just a really quick way that we do it. If your child is showing that they need some support with developing the skills associated with nonsense word fluency, you can be having them practice those phoneme, graphemes, or letter sound pairings that they may be covering at school, especially if they use UFly. Check in and see what they are working on for the week. You can get the home practice sheets, whether it's from the teacher or you can get it online if you're looking. I'm always happy to help. So if you're looking for those, just send me a message and I can point you in the right direction, but you'll still need to know what skill specifically your child is working on. So always communicate with your child's educator or educators to find this out. When we do any practice around this, it might be beginning to be just practicing recognizing the letters and the sounds associated with that letter. From there, you might begin to have your child read simple words and it might be a single word. And from there, you're going to build up as you notice they're becoming more automatic in that to sentences, to other text. So we have that phonics piece coming into play that they are really quickly being able to recognize letters and sounds that are paired together. From there, we have the oral reading fluency. This is where children are going to read out loud. There's 3 passages that they read for a minute at a time, just so that we can gauge their understanding of different phonics patterns. Are they able to blend words? Do they read with any fluency? So it sounds like a conversation that they're having. And we also check for their accuracy. So if they are reading a passage that is unfamiliar to them, are they making a lot of errors? Or are they able to use effective decoding strategies to read out loud? So again, this is where it's really important at home that if your child has the opportunity to read out loud to anyone, it's really beneficial as a foundational skill. Children need to be able to understand letters are going to go together to make words, words make sentences that we are either reading or writing. But the more practice we have and exposure that we have to actually reading and applying the skills that we're learning or writing, the better off our kiddos are going to be at independently being able to navigate reading and writing, whether it's at school or at home. So make sure that you are giving them that chance to do reading out loud with you. If your child is older and they have developed a lot of those phonics skills and decoding skills, then reading silently is something that is really great for them to practice, but we want to make sure they have these foundational skills in place first. After the oral reading fluency is done, we do ask children to retell what they read about. It's important, again, the goal is that we want for children to be able to read to learn. And so they actually have to be able to take in and understand what it is that they have read. So we ask them to retell us about a story, the passage that they have read, and see how many details they can provide, whether they can make inferences and think a little bit deeper about what they read, or if they're just summarizing the story for us. These are all really good strategies that you could be practicing at home. So whether you're reading to your child, there it is again, always putting in that plug for read alouds at home. If you're reading to them, ask them those questions. They can retell you the story and summarize it effectively. Can they make inferences and think a little bit deeper based on their own experiences and make connections to the story that you read? And so that's the listening comprehension. You might want to bring in that vocabulary piece where there's going to be words that you read to them and you pause and you talk about what those words mean to help build their vocabulary. Because when they're reading, if they come across more words and they have a bigger vocabulary and understanding, those words aren't going to be as challenging to figure out. And they're not going to have as much of a hard time understanding what they're reading because words aren't going to be tripping them up as they read, essentially. We want for them to be able to comprehend those pieces, whether we start out in the beginning with that listening comprehension, and then eventually when they read to you, asking them to think out loud about the story that they've read and ask them those questions just to clarify that they actually understood what they read to you. Those are the subtests that are covered from kindergarten to grade 2. Starting in grade 3, we also have the maze subtest. And so this subtest I know that educators are using in their classroom as well. And so this one just has your kiddo may read a passage silently to themselves, and they have to every so often pick from a set of 3 words, a word that's going to make sense in the blank part of a story. They have to be able to fluently read the passage and have that vocabulary and understanding of what they've read to pick the right word that actually makes sense in the sentence that they have read. So it's again another gauge of their fluency to see how far they can get through the passage, as well as how much of it are they comprehending as they read it. Those are the subtests within Acadience for our early primary grades. I think it's really beneficial that if you get this information from your child's educator, then you have that starting point for how you can be supporting at home with different activities and little things that you can be doing to really help build that strong foundation for literacy. One thing to note is that Acadience is a universal screener that focuses on reading skills. So if you're wanting for your child to also get in that writing practice, because we know that writing is a really crucial skill for our children to develop, and it does really go hand in hand with reading. We don't have one without the other. And writing can be really demanding on the brain. So it takes some time to develop those skills. So if you can get in more writing with your child, I really encourage doing that as well. especially if you're giving them words, or give them a simple sentence and have them write it out. They're then having to use those skills to decode words because they can read it back to you and make sure they did the proper sentence or word. You're going to have them practice segmenting so that they can independently spell the words. Writing is a really great strategy if you can get your child to even write a few words at home once or twice throughout the week. With that in mind, we are at the end of the first episode of season 2 of the Lit Mom podcast. I hope that this episode has given you some valuable information or a deeper understanding of why educators are currently using universal screeners in their classroom, what this information can do to support your child's learning at school, as well as how you might be able to use it at home to support them by getting more information about what skills we really need to target to move them forward in their learning journey. But one website that is free that I haven't recommended yet is starfall.com. Starfall.com has free decodables that you can look at or you can print. There's also games, depending on the grade that your child is in, that they can play. There's literacy, but there's also math. So this is a website that our son actually really enjoys playing on. So it's one that I recommend to check out. And last but not least, I'm going to share 2 books today. And so the 2 books that I am going to share first, the book is Hill Reader. So this is book 3. And so there are, I think, 13 in the series. I just ordered it off of Amazon, but they are passages, and you can see that these are fairly short in length. So for our son, they're decodable, but it gives him some practice. There's no pictures to look at. And then there's some comprehension questions. So we can just ask some questions to make sure that he understood what he read. And so the higher up in the series you go, the more complex the texts are going to be in the phonics skills and patterns, as well as the irregular words. They're fairly cheap if you're looking, and there are more than enough passages in here to last a while. If you have a child that is just beginning to work on those decoding and fluency, perhaps you get the very beginning of the series and you just have them read a sentence, have them just do one sentence at a time, build up from there. So that is one option, something that we use at home. The picture book that I would like to share for the first episode of season 2 is a Forest of Reading nominee. The book is called Benny the Bananasaurus Rex. It is written by Sarah Beth Holden, and illustrations are by Emma Pedersen. And so this is a really cute book for our younger children, talking about a little boy who loves bananas, banana everything. So if you think about your child and something that they just always have to have or love, this might be a book for them. And it is a really cute story. It's not a very long story, so it might be good for our children that are preschool or kindergarten, but I love the illustrations as well. And so I think it's a worthwhile book to check out. Your school may have it if you are an educator listening in, as again, it's part of the Forest of Reading. So that's it for episode 1 of season 2. I hope that you will continue to join me this season as we dive into more content that is focused on structured literacy and how you can support your child at home. At this time, we are going to do 1 episode a month. And the reason that I am saying 1 episode a month is right now we're in the full swing of the school year. I am just starting to take on teaching and instructing reading part 1 additional qualification course. And so making sure that we have that balance between what I'm doing at work. At home, I'm going to do 1 episode a month for the second season of the Lit Mom podcast. So I hope that you will continue to be a part of the Lit team. Please share the podcast with other educators, with parents that may find the information valuable for what they're doing at home to support their child or children. The more the merrier. If you have any questions, please always feel free to reach out, send a comment. Till next time, this is the Lit Mom podcast. I'm your host, Dev, bringing tips and tricks about literacy straight to your headphones. Keep listening, keep learning, keep reading.